Good morning, July 17th, 2025. Today's guest, Dr. George Kingston, and just a tremendous friend and a person like all of the Sharks who has dedicated their lives to the game and probably done more than anybody on the planet in terms of growth and development and making it a world game, appreciating that other countries in the world played the game and he managed to research, study, and bring those ideas to North America and implement them in the university courses while he coaches university hockey team. George did so many other things. We're looking forward to him being a guest on today's program to talk about his life and capturing the wonderful memories of all the great things he's done. Now, do you remember the different people that presented?
Oh yeah.
Can you just refresh my memory on those?
Well, Ludwig Bukoc from Czechoslovakia, that's what it was then.
Yeah,
He came twice. And Werner Persson, a Swedish guy,
yeah,
and Hans Lindsberg, another Swedish guy,
yeah,
and Kjell Larsson, another Swedish guy,
yeah.
and Roger Nielsen came, and then he didn't finish the last few days. He had to go. I think George jumped in and finished.
Yeah.
Uh, and a bunch of the Canadian coaches, I think George and Dave King and those guys.
Yeah.
And then in '85, he brought Johanny, and that's how I met Johanny Walston.
Okay. Morning, Hal.
Morning, boys. Can you hear me?
Hi,
We,
Al.
You can?
yeah.
Hi.
George, can you turn on your screen so we can see uh, your great hairdo? I love it. George, you hear me?
He's muted.
Okay, your volume might not be on, George, so you have to go to the bottom and click
There he
on
is.
audio.
He's there.
Yeah, got you.
We're good. We see you.
It's on. The microphone says it's on.
Yeah, you
We,
speak. Everything's working now. Can you see our images on your?
I can see you, Wally. Yeah.
Well, up at the top, right, it should have a view. And I don't know if you click on that, it might bring us up.
Well, I can go off audio if you want, or off the video if you want. I don't know.
Well, click on video and see what happens. Leave it on video because we can see our pictures. We've lost you now, so put your video on. That'll put you back on.
Yeah.
I just love you to, see the guys that are talking and want to introduce. The only one you don't know is Hal Terse. And Hal, George, like yourself, in Minnesota, has been a sort of a major hockey person. Um, he's still coaching actively, but he's growing up with the USA hockey system and just been a part of what we've been through in terms of development with Hockey Canada. So, Hal, I just would like you to tell me a bit about yourself for George's sake. And George is just in Calgary. And George, we'll get you to do an introduction after that of yourself, a little bit of your background for the audience that's going to listen to us. Hal, introduce yourself to George, please.
Hi, good morning, George. Well, I'm just a hockey lifer guy. like the rest of the Sharks. Coached NCAA, junior hockey for a bunch of years, high school hockey for a bunch of years, a lot of youth hockey, coach education programs, just the whole gamut. Sat on the board of Minnesota Hockey, USA Hockey. Oh, I don't know. Just kind of been at it a long time, and like a shark, you got to keep swimming or we die.
Well, I know through Lou Vero, Kevin McLaughlin, Keith Blaze.
Sure.
Keith Blaze is my hero, and I worked with him with 9 years, I guess, of the Coaches Association for the NHL.
Oh, okay.
And we did all the clinics, ending up with 1,300 in Buffalo.
Yep.
And made the NHL coaches comfortable to share their knowledge. And of course, George McPhee was pissed off with us because he didn't want to share knowledge. He wanted, his coaches not to be part of the membership and all of that, which was surprising in this era because there's nothing that is without video. And, the games are videoed and, it's just a very regressive thinking. But the bottom line is that despite that, we were able to put through a coaches association that brought up the level of coaching in the National Hockey League. So that was a project that I finished in 2017. Now I work with para-Olympic athletes.
Sure.
I should say USA Hockey. I was the organizer for the 2002 Olympics in Salt Lake City, where we did the extensive research that ended up being the red, white, and blue program for the 5 to 8-year-olds. That was readily received in the United States. But, for example, even coaches like Mike Babcock in his time with Toronto was trying to pitch cross-ice hockey, small area hockey, and all of the kinds of things that are skill development. Canada is not there. Canada continues to use the games model offset with the skill development now with academies and special organizations. And every time I look at Canadian hockey, it's going more rogue. And I think there was a shot across the bow with the young men that got involved in sexual assault. And that changed the whole nature of hockey in Canada. Other sports, I could name about a half a dozen had sexual assault issues, but it only resonated with Canada. So I have great respect for my time since 1988 living in the United States and trying to help as I could. But, my hero is still Keith Blaze, Lou Vero.
He's a great guy. He's a great guy. He had a newsletter for a while. I can't remember what, because he wasn't, he went to Flex Coach.
Yeah.
Jim Johnson and those guys. You know Jim Johnson?
Yes.
Yeah,
he was one of the partners.
Yeah, he's a good friend of mine. And we've done some coaching together. And he's with the Anaheim Ducks now. Yeah, he's a player development guy and a scout or whatever. But Keith and I wrote some articles for him for his newsletter he was doing, and for USA. I don't remember. I think it only lasted for a couple of years, but yeah, he's a great guy.
Well, George.
Yes, Wally.
Peter Whitney has joined us, and I'm going to Peter just to quickly introduce himself. He's like ourselves. He's retired from coaching actively, but he's just got involved developing female hockey in Puerto Rico. He's assisting a coach there. So, like all the Sharks, he's a good. So, Peter, and I'm going to recommend to anybody listening to this to Google George's name and read his bio, because what he's done over his lifetime is daunting. There's so much stuff, given so much to the game. He's what I call the pioneer in Canada. So, Peter, would you introduce yourself, please?
Sure. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, George.
Good morning.
I'm in Connecticut, so that's in the States, about 30 minutes west of Hartford, the capital there. That's
Right.
where I am. Coached through youth hockey, coached through prep school hockey, ACHA, club hockey, started an NCAA Division I program. Coached some girls high school hockey along the way, scouting the USHL for a player agent for some prep schools. Most recently, as Wally mentioned, I just started helping out with Team Puerto Rico in the IIHF that's starting to create a program that they have. The men are a little bit more going than the women. The women are within the last 2 years, I think it is. And helping them develop a team and a program that will hopefully eventually be able to compete in pool play for the Olympics.
Well, I certainly applaud. I've only been in Puerto Rico one time, and that was with an exhibition game pre-season with the New York Rangers. And, the bottom line is that I started in mite hockey, coach midget. We tried to get in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada, a high school hockey program and tried to get more of a college system. If you look at 5 of the recent world championships, all are resting in the United States. It's not by accident. It's because of youth hockey, school hockey, prep hockey, college hockey, and an educated approach is what I'm going to call it to the game of hockey that has produced wonderful hockey players, wonderful skill, wonderful competition, and it's no accident. Canada remains wedded to the games model, playing harder, tougher schedules, more games, from my analysis, at any rate. But I'm sort of an expat now because I've really been stateside and world side since 1988.
Where are you now? Are you living in the States now?
I am. So we hang our hat. I hang my hat now in Montana.
Yeah.
But I spend most of my time on the desert because my wife had osteoarthritis and dementia. So our journey finished September 10th. But I had 69 years together as the most fortunate man in the world.
Oh, that's great.
That's great. That's awesome.
What part of Montana are you in?
The wonderful part, Flathead Lake, Whitefish,
Oh, sure.
Lakeside, Montana, to be more specific.
That's
And
awesome.
so, it's a view that I look across the water and I look to Big Fork, Montana, and then to the Jewel Basin and the Marshall Wilderness.
That's
And if
awesome.
that isn't inspiring, I don't know what is.
Well, hell, I have to tell you a story about George because, like you, George Hell is into so many other things, but photography is sort of his sideline passion, and he takes some incredible photographs. And I coached with George, University of Calgary team 1 year, and George was just an unbelievable person. Like George, I really respected how you appreciated classical music, and I think it was sort of your
That was Wendy.
distraction on game days. And George was a runner. I think he's done some ultra marathons back in the day. And Just recently, we had a big reunion, a Calgary Dinosaur University team reunion. I met George there. He's in town. He has a home there, which he's cleaning out, and we all know how difficult that is, and sorting things out to give away or take away and throw away. But it just goes with the life. So, George, I really don't know where to begin because we could talk about your life and your chronology of it. I'm just going to tell people to Google, and that still won't give us enough information. But one thing I want to get on, it's something Tom and I started to talk about before you joined, George. Um, and you mentioned the NHLPA and the reluctance of a general manager to get involved in sharing learning. In our era, in your time at the university, you were one of the leaders in initiating the passing on of information. So Tom and I talked about the university classes and the guest coaches you brought in and the impact it had. I went to two of the sessions and I was absolutely blown away. Tom went to all 9 of the sessions. So, George,
Yeah.
can you
Of
talk
course
a
he
little
did.
bit about how did that come about? What inspired you to do it? Uh, did you know at the time that we weren't in the stream of the developmental game that was happening in the rest of the world?
Well, let me go back. With the Alberta Golden Bears, I had a wonderful coach that I met in grade 11 of high school. And in grade 10 of high school, I met Murray Smith. And then Murray Smith and Claire Drake went to the University of Alberta. I declined scholarships to go down to 3 schools because I couldn't get architecture or physical education. But I basically landed on phys ed because I enjoyed what Claire Drake and Murray Smith did every day. And so I played hockey for Claire, but I didn't make the team the first year because players were coming back from Eddie Shore. And that was Vic Zerko and Vern Bahal and unbelievable players. There were about 7 of them. And so there I was. I played basketball for the University of Alberta for my first year. And the second year, then I made the hockey team, and that was my love. But if you're going to Google me, please Google William George Hardy. W.G. Hardy. There's the Hardy Trophy. And for most of us, the Hardy Trophy was more important than the Stanley Cup because it was all amateur hockey. William George Hardy, I encountered in my second year of university when I took a classics course. In my third year of university, I took 2 classics courses from William George Hardy. And he's in the Alberta Sports Hall of Fame, and I'm not sure there should be more. Because if you look at a lifetime of achievement, mine pales, I think everyone else pales by comparison to all the things he did for amateur athletes, negotiating with the National Hockey League, working with the International Ice Hockey Federation. He was my stimulus to go out into international hockey, which I did in 1971 for 5 months. Before the 72 series, I spent 6 weeks in the Soviet Union as the guest of Anatoly Tarasov and a couple other people. But the bottom line is, I was certainly interested in the outreach. As a farm boy in Saskatchewan, Al, I could see my dog run away for 3 days. And so I thought the perspective was that there was another world out there, and I was very curious. And so that was my start. And I came back and I tried to share my knowledge. If I hang my hat on anything, it's that the coaching association was preceded by the initiative to have national coach certification. In Canada, we would license dog catchers, but we wouldn't license coaches and managers and people leading youth sport, amateur and kids sport. And for me, it was a different journey than Claire Drake or most coaches. I moved myself into administration. And in that administration, I tried to be an influencer through the Coaching Association of Canada, through setting up the Association of University Coaches. And mostly, I'm going to say, one day I went to Claire Drake and I said, you know, Claire, you're really interested in high school hockey. I've got 8 coaches who will put together high school teams, but I would like you to do a clinic. This was 1962. And Claire looked at me and he said, no. And I couldn't believe it. I mean, it was dumbfounded. And then he said, unless you and Dick Wintermute do presentations. So 1962 was the first clinic I got involved with Claire, and that became an Alberta, then a BC, and then Canada. The program that basically Claire and I wrote became the International Ice Hockey Federation go-to clinic. And so that initiative, you know, I hang a hat on coaching certification and coach education through the National Hockey League Coaches Association. So if there's anything you want to Google, I think the most significant thing is I had the opportunity to work with the best players in the world in the National Hockey League, but I also had to work with the best coaches in the world. And annually at the University of Calgary, we brought in every sport, top people in sports psychology, sport physiology, biomechanics, and then every coaching discipline. And so there's where I would say, if you want to Google, you may not pick up what I think was significant. Thank you, Wally.
George, much appreciated. And I don't know if Tom's still on, but
Yeah.
Hi, Tom.
Hi, George. Good to see you.
Good to hear your voice, man.
And for the sake of the public out there, which we are all much older than, Tom, can you just mention the presenters that did George's clinic? And then, George, I'm going to get you to talk about each of them and that experience. Tom, you run through that list again.
Well, Ludik Bukac, who was coaching Czechoslovakia, he came twice. And that was really eye-opening because, you know, to hear how different people played, you know, because we never heard that in Canada. And then Werner Pearson, who was a real innovator from Sweden, and Hans Lindberg, coach of Canada Cup, and Kjell Larson, and Roger Nielsen. And one year, I think, George, you did it about Russian hockey and had some other Canadian coaches come in with you. And then that's how I met Johanny Walston. That really influenced my coaching life because I hooked up with him for years and we did programs together. And I don't know if I missed anybody there.
No, let me just follow up by saying, in 1971, I spent 6 weeks in Moscow while the team was training for the 72 series. And I had saunas and vodka and everything else that went along with being with Anatoly Tarasov. At any rate, Lou Barrow probably outdid me in that one. But the bottom line is, it was an education to talk through an interpreter and to pick his brain, because there he was with all of the mass participation in ice hockey out on whatever ice surface they could do. The most efficient nation was Czechoslovakia, named Czechoslovakia. And the primary guy that I wired into was Ludek Bukac. And he was an innovator. He coached Sparta Prague. He was the national team coach. And he was part of the efficiency. They had 5 arenas that were in the whole of Czechoslovakia. Their development program started at age 5, 6 by identifying talent based on what the parents might have been as athletes. And then they were selected into the different sports. Now, that was very common in Sweden and Finland and then the Soviet Union, also China. I went to China in 1972 when Richard Nixon opened up ping pong or table tennis diplomacy. And we spent 39 days there. So for me, my field was international and comparative physical education, sport, recreation, and philosophy and current issues and all that type of thing. But the bottom line was that hockey was my love. And then off to Finland, Johanni, and I'm going to say Finland, with 4 million people at that time, were the most innovative and continue to be so. And, about 7 years ago, every team at every level has a goaltender practice once a week. Is it any surprise why we have so many Finnish goaltenders in the National Hockey League? And then you look at Sweden, and Sweden were, the big brother in many respects. And I probably spent 2 years in the Soviet Union in total, a year in Czechoslovakia, Czech Republic, Czechia, and then a year in Sweden and a year in Finland. By the time I did what I was a hockey ambassador. I was pissed off with Canadian hockey's reputation, only for fighting, only for tough. But what they wanted to learn from me was, where did Canadian players get heart? Where did American players get heart? And the heart came from the long road trips, getting kicked off buses because they lost a game in the middle of nowhere in Saskatchewan, where I grew up. And you toughened up and you played till the 60 minute. Ultimately, that paid off for Canada to eke through the 72 series with last minute every time. But the bottom line is that the last minute, I think, has become more of a last minute for Canadian hockey because the development might of the United States is taking over. And there are more players and more competition in the Soviet Union, except that we only see the occasional player now that bucks the trend and comes to the National Hockey League or is allowed to do so. But there was much to learn from Sweden, Finland, Czech Republic. And in 1935, there was a Canadian that started Czech hockey on its route. And so, there was a precedent, if I can put it that way. Talking to William George Hardy was the kind of stimulation that sent me on my journey. Enough. Thank you, Tom. And thank you for what you've done to hockey. It's great.
Oh, appreciate it, George.
George, I'm just not sure if you're familiar with how Tom, after he met Johanni, he was been one of Johanni's best friends over time. And Tom, can you?
Right, I knew that. Yeah.
Can you talk a bit about Johanni and your relationship and his influence on you?
Well, very early, I would say probably at the very start of my travels in 1971. And it may have been at a game in Sweden before that I met Juhani, because the rivalry between Finland and Sweden is historic, as is Czechoslovakia and the Soviet Union. And Juhani, I believe, I met at one of the cup games, might have been 1968. I'm not quite recalling that. But from that time on, Juhani was one of the people in Finland that I talked with a lot. And Tom, I know you've collaborated very successfully with Juhani in publishing and making a real presence in international hockey. And that's to be complimented. And I think that the more generally that we can be ambassadors for our game or attempt to be that, I felt that that was what I was doing. I was trying to say that there was a Quebec group, Gaston Marcotte, Georges Lariviere. I'm going to name probably 8 or 9 other coaches, but they were a think tank. And then with Claire Drake and Dave Andrews, who went on to be the president of the American Hockey League, and Dale Henwood and others, we formed a think tank in the West. And Wally participated in, Tom, you did. And in that think tank, we shared information, and there were, we competed like hell against each other, but then we had a beer after and we shared clinics. And so, the whole sharing of information was anathema to the National Hockey League, because they wanted to have their own propriety. But my view of the National Hockey League is, of course, it's a business. I'm sorry that I wasted a lot of my coaching time in the National Hockey League, because I kept developing players to go to another team to win the Stanley Cup. And even though I started the first year with Bob Murdoch and Drew Remenda with San Jose, we had players playing 17 years later. Why? Because we went in and we tried to teach the game and make every player aware of what role he could be successful in. And so that was the business of hockey. And my contribution to the players was simply identifying who you could be, wanted to be, and then I would work with you and spend time with you off the ice to try to make sure that you were successful in your business career. And so I was a business-like coach, but very much a player's coach. And it was a frustration. I want to contrast that. I worked in, I believe, 7 nations. Gentlemen, if someone travels 4 hours to go on the ice at 11:15 at night, travels to practice for 90 minutes, and then drives home 4 hours, do you think they might love the game? That was Mexico. I worked in Lithuania, the same kind of story model. You want to go where you love the game, the athletes love the game. And the road less traveled has been, I think, a road that my wife said, okay, well, what's the next road we're taking? Where are we off to, But she was curious about the world, and I left the university as a full professor, had been acting dean, associate dean, and I had to call out the president for sexual assault in our building. And he was on the selection committee for the next dean. So I buggered off. I was out of there because we wanted to explore the world. And then I came to the Minnesota North Stars in 1988, 89. And unfortunately, that was a franchise that had been run into the ground, as you probably knew. Lou Lanning was a good hockey man, but the other general managers would phone him in the first period to talk to Lou, the intermission. And then they'd phone him in the second period because they knew Lou would get so pissed off with his players that he would be talking trade. And so over time, unfortunately, Minnesota, even though they joined with an American league and potential world hockey, the franchise went down. We at least made the playoffs in 88, 89. But I left there because every day the players came in and said, "What are you here today, George? Where are we going? Where are we going?" You know, and there were great players there. Nobody better than Craig Hartsburg. Brian Bellows was an athlete that apparently was a coach killer. He wasn't with me because I went to him one day. I said, "Can I buy you lunch? I just want to talk to you about a few things." And I said, "You're having trouble, you know, and getting frustrated with not scoring goals." So we talked for half an hour. I gave him a couple ideas, and they went back, and it helped him. And then that helped with Neil Broughton and helped with others. Getting to key players at the National Hockey League was the same as getting to key players in every team you coach. Know who the guys are that you can enlist. And as Fred Shiro said one time, you got to keep away the 9 guys that hate you by having 9 guys that help and like you, and the 5 guys are in the middle. Those are the guys you have to work on. Start there. At any rate, that's the business of hockey. And the business was shit ran downhill. It still does. And coaches are always in the firing line, and you're hired to be fired. And so, you know, Al McNeil was my mentor in pro hockey and couldn't get a better man. Enough.
Good stories.
Well, George, your story about the business of hockey, and we all get tied up in it. Like, I can sense the Sharks in the past few weeks. I mean, we've talked about that NHL final, and we've broken down Edmonton and Florida Panthers to death. And it's like we played the game vicariously by talking about it. So we're hooked. But
yes,
the business of hockey. And
but it's also the role model for the game. And I think that, you know, I love hockey players like Gordie Howe that would sign every damn autograph. Now it's the business of hockey, and a lot of players brush off the fans, and mainly they brush off the kids. That's unconscionable to me because, you know, unfortunately, a real hero like Tiger Woods messed all up. But, you know, everybody needs heroes. And young kids, if they're going to be good in anything, have to have, you know, a gymnast ahead of them that they admire, or a football player ahead of them that they admire, or a basketball player. They may not be or ever become that athlete, but, you know, being a sportsman who cares for kids is really the most important thing in the business of anything. You want to have role models that are going to develop in the game to become lovers of the game and followers of the game, as Wally, we were talking about at the reunion, Dino Friday.
well, I'm more into the student athletes and always have been. I mean, I tried to make pro hockey and played minor pro, but I went into a life of dealing with school students and subjects, but phys ed and coaching different sports. And then, of course, hockey became one of them. And I think one of the things that actually does happen at the highest level, and maybe not so much at the lowest level, is an appreciation of the opponent and the competitiveness of the opponent. And my simple solution to the dilemma of the business of hockey is not worrying about who's going to win the championship. There's only going to be one winner. But it's what you learn getting there, what you learn trying to get there. And your job, George, and as a coach was, my job as a coach was, and as a player, is to make the opponent better. And that philosophy for me, uh, it can stand up with everything. It's not, I'm going to be better than you, I'm going to make more money than you. Now, I'm going to achieve, and because you taught me, and I learned from losing. And that's really the lesson of life. So,
Well, I go, Wally, to one of the trademark books that I read early in my time, Sun Tzu, The Art of War. And if you're going to know your opponent, you have to know them thoroughly, and you have to be in the shoes of your opponent. And of course, that's respect for your opponent. And now you want to beat them. And so, I'm approaching it the same kind of rationale, but from a little different perspective. And I'll go back to university hockey and Paul Maurice. Paul started when he was 26 years old, I believe, with the Detroit Red Wings. And over time, he's evolved with a number of teams and with Soviet hockey. And he's now, there. And if you saw the players he hugged at the end of the game, Gudjanovic and Prosek and players that were not in the lineup got the first hugs. And that was very significant because he built a team. And even if he didn't play, you were part of that team. But he rolled his lines 1, 2, 3, 4, 4, 3, 2, 1, whatever. And in the meantime, the Edmonton, wonderful two best players in the game, possibly. But the bottom line was that there wasn't a team there because the players never knew who was going to go out the next shift until they were tapped or told they were going out. And the ultimate is you win as a team and lose as a team. You win championships with defense, and Edmonton were trying to win championships with offense. That's simplistic, but that's part of the formula. No one respect your opponent. Then beat them.
Peter, I'm curious, are you still there?
I am.
Now, you've been listening a long time, Peter, and George has got such an extensive background. I'm so glad to have him on. And your thoughts, Peter, on everything we've talked about, because you're having a foray into the international women's game. It's become a game for everybody.
Well, Wally, I come from the world of the reason you have 2 ears and 1 mouth is you listen more than you talk and you learn a lot. So I really enjoy it, and I so many things. It's really satisfying when you get on a call like this, Wally, and like we listen to each other, and the things that as a coach I think are important. And I don't mean the X's and O's. I mean all those other things that have been discussed are important and the difference that they make. And when you hear other people with the kind of experience that you all have, more or less validating your thoughts is pretty great. I mean, that's one of the things I love about this, because I'm on the same page with all those things, that George has mentioned today. And I think that's one of the challenge as we build this IHF team is right now it's essentially a tournament team. So there may be a practice right before the tournament, but it's one skate, and really you're just trying to get their legs underneath them. So the challenge, and when I say challenge, I like challenges. So I feel like it's a positive thing. It's getting them on board, trying to get them on board together in terms of weekly Zoom meetings, sharing strategy, sharing culture, all of those things. I think that's the exciting part of this for me, because, you go in, you play a tournament, 3 days, you got 5 games. So you really need to do a lot of things prior to that to try to get them on the same page. And as we're building, from tournament to tournament, very often it's not the same players as the organization looks to try to add higher end players, because at the end of the day, you're going to need the best possible players if you're ever going to get to that point, along with some other things, where you can compete, in pool play.
Well, the idea of competing, I mean, George, every team you've ever coached, you want to win. You coach to win, and I think the ability to do that it's just almost so hard to grasp. There's an art to coaching and to achieving that kind of success. So,
and I agree with you. And I think one of the pitfalls that coaches fall into is the success piece and winning means, again, when we talk about Edmonton and Florida, 2 very different approaches on what success means and how you win means, right? And you see that very often, really, right, in youth hockey on up. Let me just get my best players out there. Let me get my best players out there and let them go and see if we can win a game. As opposed to, again, like what George was talking about and what you always espouse, which I agree with, getting 4 lines going so that everybody can play and everybody feels a part of it. When you have players who don't even dress, so excited and really into it, then you've done something, I think, as a coach. I mean, that's again, that's the trick to it, if you will, if there's a trick, if you want to use those words. That's the key, I guess, is a better way to put it, to having a successful program. Because I've always, when I was coaching college, that was my goal. My goal was to have a successful program. A team, just a bunch of players, play a bunch of games, see how we do. But between community service, the academic piece, how you treated other individuals, faculty, administration, all those things were what created a program. And I was very proud while I was there that we were able to do that.
Peter, I love your philosophy, because I think it meshes. For me, Wally, you want your players, you want the people you work with to win in life. And winning in life is a hell of a lot more than a game. And you learn through games, and you learn, all of the things we're supposed to be able to be cooperative, a sense of community. My background was growing up with pioneers in Saskatchewan. To them, the most important thing was they could save their community. Now, there were a lot of settlers that came over, as hobby farmers from Europe. The serious farmers, Wally, were in your background from the Ukraine and in Poland and so forth. But my grandparents were native Mohawk and Oneida. And I learned everything in my childhood about the importance of the sense of community. And the community, I think, has to apply to the community of life. You respect everybody else. And yes, you want to be successful. Winning is gauged as one of the measures of success. But, you know, it would be unconscionable for me as a university coach not to have players work their guts out Monday through Thursday and then not be playing on Friday and Saturday. To play the game, it should be the fun of the game. And at every level, I think that that three-letter word win is superseded by another three-letter word, fun. And so, you know, Peter, I was pissed off when my daughter had to follow Abby Hoffman, who is a real spokesperson in Canada for women's hockey, and women's role in sport. And my daughter was maybe a better player in our backyard rink than most of the boys, but she had to quit at age 12, being part of the program. And so, fast forward, I went in 2007 with the responsibility of getting the men's hockey team back in the Olympics. They hadn't been there since 1994. This was 2010. Forming a women's hockey team and helping the sled team, the para ice hockey team. And so we fell one goal short with the women's program because there was a bulldozer, 2 or 3 players that pushed the goaltender and the puck over the line. That was the difference of Norway going and Japan going to the 2010 Olympics in Vancouver. Working with the women was an eye-opener. They look through your eyes. They penetrate right to the sense of the community, the consensus, the cooperation, the communication. All of those things are hallmarks of what I experience with women's hockey and with para athletes as well. There's a love for the game and a desire to have fun. And if you make practices fun, it's usually through competition as one of the points where it's 1 against 1, 2-2, 3-3, small ice games. As Wally will say, you know, the reward was always to play the assistant coach at the end of the pyramid of building from one-on-one competition. And then I'd blow the whistle, and the person that didn't have the puck was dropped out, and then the person that had the puck moved in. We might have played for 4 or 5 minutes, but it sent them off the ice with talking and yapping each other and having fun. Communication in the community. These are the same guys that I take considerable pride with Wally and the other coaches that were great coaches with me to see that players give back to hockey. I always ask when we get to reunions, did you give back to the game? And then I'm amazed. A player that played pro hockey like Terry Johnson, he worked with a 5 and 6-year-old. Okay? He could work higher, but he loves seeing the entry. Everything you need to know, you learned in kindergarten. And so there was kindergarten with TJ. Wally? Anyway, Peter, I'm right with you.
Awesome. That's really great to hear. And I think I'm sure you went through it too. Probably one of the most, I'm not going to say difficult, but unpleasant pieces of coaching university is when you have to tell a player who works incredibly hard that they're not in the lineup because you have to be better than somebody. You have to find somebody that you can be better than to get in the lineup. So you might work as hard as you can, and sometimes that's not enough. So you have to somehow continue to build that player up so they know that the fact that they are making the maximum effort is a reward and is an accomplishment. It's very hard. Those are some of the more difficult conversations. And you get that, right, very often when you have a player, maybe he's a senior, because you're always trying to recruit stronger, better players as you move forward. And very often it's that senior who's been there for 4 years that you can reward if you can, but players know if someone should or shouldn't be in the lineup deep in their heart. They may say, well, I'm better than that guy, but deep down, I think they know.
Billy, come here. Come on.
Well, Peter, I just wanted to mention one thing here. College rosters, I'm not sure what the top end is, but I know it has been 28 at times. I'm not sure what it's going to be next year. Obviously, there's a lot of red-shirted athletes. So getting into the lineup is really important for them. And that's why the coach at the college level has to really reinforce the academic side of things, because that's the reason they're playing, is to get through school that will lead to a vocation, possibly. And I don't know about all of you, but I went to university to play hockey. I was 17 years old, and everybody on that team had graduated from junior hockey already. And they had decided that that was where they were going to go. And there were just a few of us that were younger and stars in our eyes that aspired to want to go pro. And I think even today, talking about the male players, coming from major junior with full rides at university, they still want to be hockey players. And there is so much opportunity on the male and female side to continue to play the game and enjoy the game in many different pro leagues at many different levels. And that's one of the positive things about it. And George, the thing that impressed me with that 1 year I worked with you and the players that were on the team, how successful many of them became in their real lives. Some of them became pretty wealthy oil men. Some became owners of big car dealerships. Some became teachers. Some became firemen, and they still play hockey today. And I think the purpose of being an athlete is really being a good person, and you're going to be a better student. And I don't think anybody's been hurt from playing hockey, especially in a scholastic environment, whether it's school, university, or college. There's more risks out in the professional world, in the major junior world, and you have to keep the antenna up in terms of what's going on out there. Keep things in perspective is really, really important.
You know, Wally, I thank you for your comments, and I thank you for the fact that, you know, during our time, that was early in my time as a coach, more and more I figured out that you win with people, and you win with great coaches that, like you, that were with me. And the experiences were hard work. I spent more time cutting players than I did, having players make the roster, so to speak. And at some point, we had 250 kids there. And I said at the very start, you know, we're going to do dry land training. And before we hit the ice, you're going to determine whether or not you want to be prepared to beat the Alberta Golden Bears or the Toronto blues. And if you are, then you're going to train hard and you're going to work every day to prepare for it. Preparation is the key to success. And then once we hit the ice, I would always post a list and say that if you're not on this list and you feel you should be remaining on the team list, then please see me. And every time I would give that player an opportunity to be back on the ice. And then I would reevaluate. Now, I have to say, there have been players that I said, you won't play until maybe Christmas time, but I'll get you there. And the best teams I had at the University of Calgary started with, like you, a 17-year-old that wasn't in major junior. It was in junior B, and some that were in junior C. But they maybe were late maturers, I'm not sure. But the fact was that they were young men who were prepared to work, and they valued what I would say was determination and perseverance and all the things that ultimately I'm immensely proud of the teachers, because I was a teacher in high school for 6 years and college for 22. And I took my role as a teacher equally as important with my classes as I did for coaching. I was coaching teaching the next generation. What are they going to be? How are they going to be? And whatever the external forces, they can control their lives to much of the extent by their hard work and preparation for doing whatever they wish to do. I left the farm, Wally. I was told by my grandparents, whatever you do in life, make sure it's left in a better way. Period.
Well, George, I have to bring up a story from your induction into the U of C Hall of Fame. Um, Tim Bothwell and I attended that, and George was one of many inductees. There were a number of players that I'd coached in junior that were being inducted, but there was one special athlete that was a wrestler that I coached in junior high school and high school that gave credit to George because he believed in him and he pushed him to toe the line academically. And he brought that up at the ceremony. It was quite moving, but it was just sort of a statement of who you are and getting the most out of everybody you work with. And for a wrestler to get up, and as a student athlete, you were in charge of, must have had some role in academic guidance. You gave him a chance. And
it was a second chance, Wally. And I was the associate dean academic. Okay. Here's a jock, here's a coach, and I'm the academic person, not the athletic person there. That was Dennis Kratz. And so my job was I had wonderful staff working with me, was to identify young men and women. And if they were sliding, then I was the person that interviewed them. And so much of my time was, I worked until 2 a.m. grading and all that crap. But at 7 o'clock, I met for the real crap. And that was problems of 250 support staff, 54 teaching entrepreneurs, and mainly students. And in that workload, I loved mostly working with the students because they had the best future of all of us. And there was an Olympic athlete. Did I know that at the time? Did you know that there was an Olympic athlete you were working with in high school?
I knew it. I knew it in
You know, you always believe, and you want to make sure that no door is left unopened. But there he was.
Yeah. Well, you know, it may be simplistic, but my role as a teacher and a coach, and I think it's something for coaches to consider, is to transmit belief and just being the best you can be and knowing what they're good at and being able to make them better. And that particular wrestler in junior high school came to practice with my high school team. And he could beat everybody in the weight class and bigger that were 3 years older than him. And it was obvious to me that he was a good athlete, but he wasn't like a pure athlete. He was a determined, driven, competitive character, and character with a capital C. You could trust him with your life. And what he laid on the table, on the mat, every match, and of course, we talk about the Olympics, and he did go to 2 Olympics, and he was a backup at the Olympics. It's that good at that level. And I'm just going to throw in Sammy Jo Small's name, who she's been on before. She's another one of those superior athletes who went to, I believe, Stanford University on a track and field scholarship and played goal for the men's team. And she ended up going to 3 Olympics, being a backup in 3 Olympics. And she's now making a pretty good living public speaking and leadership training. And the title of her book is The Role I Played. It's an amazing, amazing story. So sports just does good for people. There's, it's keeping us getting us up on Thursday mornings and continue to have the conversations. And, kudos to Peter and Hal and Tom. They're still on the bench. They're still coaching. They're still on the ice. And George, Tom, he still skates twice a week. And in fact, I have to tell you that he ran his hockey school first week of Stampede, and he had to switch a power skating instructor to come in and do an ice time so he wouldn't miss his old timers hockey ice time. So you got to love the game. You got to love what you do, and sport is what the wrestler loves. But everybody has their passion, and Al, I don't know about you. I just look at your artwork in terms of your photographs, and I'm just saying, what is your real passion? Because you've dedicated your life to hockey, but you've got so many other things going on.
Well, I've had in hockey coaching, clearly, I mean, I think, starting year 50 this year, 49 or 50. But as you talk about, you guys talk about the bigger picture, playing the long game, because we're coaching doctors, lawyers, government people, family people, business owners. We're teaching life lessons along the way that are way more important than the score of the games, as you guys mentioned. One of the things I will say is that from coaching, and we don't all get to coach championship teams. And when I was down at Shattuck with my Bantam team, and JP Parisi was the coach,
Mhm.
And the year before, my Bantam team had won AA Silver Sticks up in Canada, and Parisi's Shattuck team had won the AAA team up in Canada at the same time. And then the following year, we went down and scrimmaged them. And as we were walking off the ice, JP looks at me and he goes, you know, you got to coach the team you have, not the one you used to have or you wish you had.
Yeah.
And that's so true, right? And I coached in a high school program. It was a startup. And small school, we started with 18 kids and no goaltender. Had to borrow one that got cut from another high school. But over the 13 years I coached it, it was only 1 year. We were under 500. And so we only played 25 games, 25 season games. But we were typically in the 15 to 18 wins. But we never had an A-level player, but we were playing in the A-League. And so, but these were smart kids, and lots of them have gone on to become engineers and doctors and lawyers and fighter pilots. One's flying an F-35 right now for the Air Force. So I learned a lot as a coach over the years to look at the kids I have, look at how they've done in the past as a group, which you can do in our youth model. And my goal is to help them do better than they've ever done. And you do that through team and, coaching all the kids, not just the top 3 or 4, and taking an interest in them as people and getting to know them. So this year we'll have 16. I know we don't carry 4 lines, we do 3 lines because apparently coaches shorten the benches so much with a 4th line that it causes problems. So most programs have 3 lines. But I will have coached, I think, almost every one of these kids either last year or the year before. So I always felt, and maybe you guys had the same thing, the second year I coached players is a lot better than the first year because we know each other and they know me, I know them. We've made adjustments to get along with each other in the appropriate way. And so to me, it's a puzzle. Every year it's a new challenge. And now it's summer and I'm already thinking about, things we're going to do differently this year than we've done the last couple of years. I've stolen some ideas from Wally and Tom and Peter, and we've shared some ideas back, and it's been a lot of fun the last couple of years on this journey that we're on.
Well, one of the questions I'm going to ask, and it's a very difficult question, what was your best coaching memory? And you could say your favorite coaching experience, your best memory. I'm going to throw it out to you, George, Peter, and Tom. And then I'm sure mine will be the last one that I'd like to comment on because it was sort of a different kind of coaching experience. But Hal, can you think of something that you would regard as special as a coaching memory? Could be a season.
Well, yeah, I mean, for a few years, I coached what we used to call midget hockey, which was U16. We got this high school system here in Minnesota that is terrific, but it also cuts kids out pretty quickly. But midgets was U16. And then I took a bunch of those kids and added some more. And we started a junior B team, the Minnesota Junior B League. And our first year, I think we only won 1 or 2 games. And then the next year, though, we beefed the team up a little bit, but a lot of the kids were the same. Some of them were probably the 4th year they were playing with me. And we got into our playoffs against the best team in the league. Winner goes to the national championship. My leading scorer is in the hospital with the flu or some darn thing. And he comes from the hospital to the arena and he plays, scores 2 goals, including the game winner, and goes back to the hospital. And the other team that already made plane reservations to go to New Jersey for the national championships and all their hotel reservations, and they had to cancel them all. And we had a wonderful time, going to the national championships with that group of kids. And none of those kids went on to play even college hockey because that just wasn't the direction they were all headed. One kid got offered a deal by Wisconsin, and his father told him, "Nope, you're not going to college," because I didn't go to college. And so he didn't get that chance. He was our goalie. He was really quite good. So that's one of my favorite ones. But there's a lot of really satisfying outcomes. I'll just tell you one more, that high school team, which we never had enough depth to win in our playoffs, but we did beat the high school team from the program I now coach in. And they fired the coach 3 days later. They were stunned. And our kids just played. They went out and we just let them have fun. And the hockey gods were with them that day. And we ended up, it was an overtime game. And I convinced them, and I learned this in the IHF, I don't know, in Bratislava or Prague or somewhere, but from a French track coach, that when you get tired, your brain takes over and decreases the amount of muscle fiber it recruits because it's trying to keep you from dying. And you can talk your way through that. You can, with self-talk, you can get yourself going again and convince yourself, at least for a short period of time, that you're not as tired as you think you are. And I think that game we won was in double overtime. And so there's just, these little things that happen through life that I think are super fun. So I'll shut up, you guys. Peter, you go ahead.
Yeah, like Hal, I think several, which I'm fortunate to have good memories, right? But I think one that really does stick out for me. Yeah, exactly. So, but one that just stick out for me. So it was the year after COVID when there was no season, and we had spent quite a bit of time I had spent with Zooms and all kinds of things, keeping the guys engaged, and it worked out. That part worked out really well. But we get back to campus and we're playing, and I still remember there's about 7 games left in the season, and there's a senior on the team who isn't very good compared to the other players. He's a good player. He's an NCAA athlete, so I'm not taking that away from him. But hard for that player to get into the lineup. But the guys absolutely loved him. And I think this is a real lesson about listening to your players. And, you don't know everything that goes on in the room, but if you listen, you can maybe learn a little bit. And Captain came to me and he said, "Coach, if you can put player X on the bench for us in the game, you can just dress him." He said, "Just dress him. It would mean the world to me and to the boys in the room." So I'm listening to this, and this was a year where there were 7 teams in the league. We laughingly call ourselves the original 7 instead of the original 6, and we were picked to finish dead last in the league. We finished 4th, and we made the playoffs, and we knocked off a perennial playoff team in the quarters, and then we went on the road to play the first place team, who was 14-3 in the regular season. We won that game in overtime. really, the odds were so stacked against us when it started overtime. My top defenseman got called on a penalty. So I'm thinking, here we go. 6-on-5 for 2 minutes against the best team in the league. So we pulled together. We killed off that penalty. We won that game in overtime. Went to the finals. Fell a goal short in the finals. But the lesson there that I learned and why it was so gratifying was not so much how far we got in the playoffs, but the fact that this group pulled together and rallied around one player that they valued so much that they knew that if coach puts this guy in the lineup, we're going to have to show him that there was a reason why. We got to be able to back it up. And they did. He never came out of the lineup the rest of that season as we got through the playoffs. And that was incredibly gratifying to me to see the progress that this group made. Not the wins, losses, none of that, but how these guys all came together. And they're still such a tight-knit group. We're on group text together. They, have been in each other's weddings, all those things. So to me, that's the most satisfying. One of the most satisfying memories.
Tom.
Well, there's certainly lots of them. I think remember a recent one is I was coaching the U18 girls, and we're in the provincials, and we took on our theme song was "The Climb" by Miley Cyrus, and before our final game, and we're playing a team that walked through the league pretty easily in St. Albert. And I still have a video. And before the game, the girls put on "The Climb." And they all started singing. And and they just played so well. They played so well, and we won the provincials. And Carla McLeod came up to me afterwards. And she was there recruiting. She said, "Tom, your girls passed better than the national team." And, that was a pretty significant, it was just kind of a neat experience. And one of those girls still coaches with me. One of the players, she's an assistant coach.
I think I remember the team and the game. So, George, you've had so many. What one stands out in your mind?
Well, I'm going to say, I asked the kids at an elementary school that my wife was the kindergarten teacher if they would come with me for an experiment. I consistently, out of 120 kids, had about 60 to 70. We were on outdoor ice 3 times a week in the afternoon. I had 2 young players and a dad who said, "You know what, this is a waste of time." And what the waste of time was, everybody had a puck, everybody played, and then we played the next game and the next game and the next game. And they skated and they did everything in crowded conditions, if I could say 70 players on the ice. And where did I learn that? I watched it at the end of a rink in the Czech Republic, Czechoslovakia. Now, what was the outcome? By Christmas, I challenged the Hillhurst team to 2 games, the Tiny Mites. Our girls and boys beat them 10-0 and 11-0 going away. And the 2 boys that doused the program and the idea and so forth, were left hanging. And so, what was it to prove? It was to prove that if you have maximum skill and better skill, ultimately you can be successful. That's one key. Now, the other, I've got many good memories from university hockey. We never won the nationals, so it was mostly agony. But our team always played well. We usually doubled the shots of every team that we played. We beat the teams that we should have and challenged, I guess. And I'll switch now to the World Championship. 1961, Trail Smoke Eaters, a small town in British Columbia, won the World Championship. They had great goaltending and great leadership. The name Bobby Crom might resonate as a player coach, and Seth Martin in 1961 was an unbelievably great goalkeeper. Great goalkeeper. And senior hockey was better than anybody recognized. For 33 years, Canada sent teams to the World Championship. It was a European holiday and all of that. And what the lesson was that I went and visited all the players that I had coached when they were 13, 14, 15 years of age in the program of excellence. These are guys that had character. And so who were they? They were players like Joe Sakic, Brendan Shanahan, Rob Blake, Luc Robitaille, to name different camps, different players. At any rate, we, for the first time, trained, had Bobby Crom speak to the team in 1994, and had a sports psychologist, Wayne Hallowell, talk to them about, the importance of representing Canada and all that. And so we won the World Championship, and many of the players, like Brendan Shanahan, came back and changed his number. Other players, it was like winning the Stanley Cup. And to see such joy that happened because of preparation and buying into a mission where Canada was always a team that the other teams laughed at because they knew they were going to drink their way out of the World Championship and party their way out. And to have that group of athletes at the very top prepare and win was special. To have the kids prepare and know how good they could become through skill. There are lessons that are very, very good in life. Develop your skill and prepare to be successful. Thank you.
Well, my story was coaching football. My first year teaching at a high school, my second year of teaching, moving to a new high school, they didn't have a coach for the junior football team. I played six man in Saskatchewan.
Oh, yeah.
I walked into the phys ed office and talked to the phys ed lead guy, and he was on the phone. They were closing down their junior football program at St. Mary's High School. Nobody knew me from Adam, but I heard of St. Mary's, and I heard of Father Whalehan and his reputation and that football program. I said, I'll coach. I mean, you're a football school and you have to have a coach. So he gave me a bag of, I remember, like a potato sack of footballs That was it. And he got me one volunteer teacher who became a very good friend of mine, and uh, away we went. Never won a game, but we had 47 kids try out. 47 finished the season. And I remember after the first loss, 45-0 or something like that, walking into the meeting room on the Monday after your weekend game, and all the players crowded in there with their heads bent over. And I said, guys, get your heads up. I don't know what I'm doing. I've never coached football before, but I'm going to learn. And we're going to get better together. And the margin reduced. We never won a game, but we got to the last game of the year against the undefeated team. And we were up at halftime by a touchdown. And we ended up losing the game. But that season for me, when I tell stories, that was the importance of being able to teach, develop skill, learn about your sport as a coach. And I actually had quite a bit of success coaching high school football because I didn't know anything about it. I knew it and I admitted it, and I really spent a lot of time learning it. But I think that's what got me hooked on coaching and teaching first. And the idea of 47 starting and 47 finishing, now I can't imagine what those guys are, if they're still alive today, what they're doing, but many of them were very prominent people. So that's my story. But
You were turning out Wes Waltz.
well, he went to my high school as a student, and he was a really gifted player. He came to my hockey schools as a younger player, but I never really coached him in minor hockey. But I knew about him, and I thought he would go on and play at a very high level, NHL, because of his skill. But he sort of got caught in the quagmire of Europe, and he was one of those skilled players back in the era when you needed to be tougher.
Mm-hmm.
There was a knock on my door. It was his father-in-law, who I taught high school with, came in the house and says, "Can you get Wes to start with a tryout with the Flames?" Dave King was coaching. And Wes had been playing in Europe. I said, well, Dave appreciates skill, and I'm sure he knows about Wes. I think I can get him to have him try out. And he did. He ended up making the team. He managed to play a role on the team, but got traded to Minnesota, where he became one of the best defensive players under Jacques Martin, was it? Or who was the coach at Minnesota at the time? I wonder if Hal knows. Defensive.
Lemaire.
Yes, Lemaire. And he played in at least a dozen years and went to a couple world championships. But he's one of those success stories from my high school, and I never really coached them in hockey. Well, Corey Hirsch was one of them, the goaltender, Lillehammer Olympics, and then played in the NHL a number of years. He's another.
Corey Hirsch got beat on the Forsberg goal that became a postage stamp from the 1994 Olympics in Sweden.
Yep, I know that.
And hell, I was thinking of Governor Waltz too. You know, his experience in football. It was very gratifying to see so many players that joined him.
Yes, indeed. Actually, if you are you know the name Tom Emmer, who's the Republican whip.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Mm.
He played for me in the United States Hockey League. And he
Yeah.
was still for 1 year, I think. But yeah, it's amazing where these kids all end up, you know, and in spite of what we think of them when they're when they're young and foolish. So
I remember one of my early years teaching, the principal said to me, he said, "Wally, don't worry, they're going to learn in spite of us." And you know, that's the reality of it. I think today's generation, and Tom can speak to this, they are capable of taking more information, processing it, and applying it than we are. And living in a technological age that they do, that we're not familiar with, uh, they are so far ahead of us in terms of their speed of thinking, processing of much more information. I think we've just got to adapt coaching them in terms of learning from them and just getting them to think about everything about what they're doing and why and how.
Wally, I'm going to contradict you. If you pay with cash, do you get the right change back? In the modern generation, they don't know cash and they don't know the times table and they don't know. And I'm surprised and amazed. But I agree with your general comment. It'll be cashless society soon, so I'll be dead.
Well, it's an interesting time, George. What I'm going to do, and we're going to have to wrap up in about 10 minutes here. Uh, I have an AI, artificial intelligence summary that is put together of the conversation. And it's a 1 pager, 1.5 pager, and it breaks it down more articulately than I ever could and
faster.
and faster. And I will receive that within an hour of the finish of this. And then I'm going to edit little bits and pieces from the conversation and put them into an email package, sharing it with over 600 coaches around the world. And the videos might be 3 minutes to 10 minutes long each. I do share the entire recorded presentation, and a number of people, I'm sure, look at it. It gets the most hits, but I don't think anybody ever listens from beginning to end. But the edited portions, I'll get anywhere from 30 to 50 hits on each one. And to me, they're getting that information, they're hearing from you guys and your stories. They're not going to get dumber for it. They're going to be better for it. So I got to thank you all. And George, how much longer are you going to be in Calgary for?
Well, hopefully, I've only thrown out 37 boxes of hockey material. And, it's a conclusion that, mostly I did presentations, so I'm glad for that. I probably, at the end of the day, should have written a book that no one would read. But the bottom line is that I'm going to go to the lake at the end of July. I'll be back in September to do more throwing out, and then I go south. Yeah. Thank you, Wally.
Now, the
Thanks
lake,
for allowing me to participate.
you're going to what?
To where Shuswap Lake.
Oh, you still got the place in Shuswap?
Well, we've only had it since 1977, and it's a family endeavor and a community of 7 cabins, and so it's pretty darn special.
Well, George, I'm so glad you could come on, and I've got my family in town today. They've all gathered, and we're going out for lunch together. And my middle youngest daughter is a sound engineer. She was here for the Stampede, working one of the major entertainment places, and but we're all in town and going to spend some time together. And thank you so much for coming
Nice.
on, George and Peter, Hal, Tom,
Oh.
sharing your words of wisdom. And I'm going to the Hall of Fame, Alberta Hockey Hall of Fame banquet. Tim Bothwell is going to drive me up with Leslie Redden on Saturday. So
Nice.
that'll be a good evening to honor Carla McLeod and Howie Draper and Joe Newendike, and there's a few NHL players, Cliff Fletcher, and it's got a great evening and all the people from that contributed to the sport of hockey in Alberta. So, George, I'm sure you've already been inducted in that hall, and you've also been inducted into the Alberta Sports Hall of Fame, which would be much more extensive than the hockey.
Well, I think it's not about the honors, it's about the humility of knowing that there are people who you can only follow in terms of what I love today, Peter, Tom, Hal, Wally, because we all have different journeys, but we're all into the same basic purpose, and that is leaving something in a better way. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thanks to your grandma.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to meet you.
Great seeing you, George.
Okay,
Thank you.
gonna sign off, guys.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye
Have a
bye.
great weekend. Yep. Bye.
Bye bye.
All the best.